If you'll allow me and indulge me for a little while, I want to look at this week's Torah portion. This is a powerful parsha. It follows on the heels of the last of the great Holy Spring convocations called Shavuot. And if you've looked at this Torah portion, it begins in Numbers chapter 4, verse 21 through chapter 7, verse 89. And the title of the parsha is Naso, and it means literally to elevate. Turn to your neighbor and tell him, you're about to be elevated. Amen. You're about to be elevated. It also can mean to lift up, to bear up, to support, to carry something, and to bear it continuously. And it's not an accident that this particular word, naso, is the word that's used as the title of this Torah portion. And this one singular word, it's amazing to me how powerful the Hebrew language is. Because it's not like English or Spanish or any other language spoken in this earth. The Hebrew language is so, again, multidimensional that it's able to reveal to you the mind and the intellect of the Creator. In fact, in Isaiah, we're told that his ways and his mind are higher than our ways. But we're also admonished to let this mind be in you, which was also in our Messiah Yeshua. Gird up the loins of your mind. And so it's definitely something that we're able to access, the mind of the Father, and you can access it through the Hebrew language if you'll take the time to just extricate the things that He has embedded, hidden, buried in there. It's not rocket science. It's not something that's hard. It just means you got to get up off your lazy backside, and instead of taking the word that somebody else has been sharing and taking that for its face value, go back and see for yourself, okay? And so it's not an accident that this one single word, naso, literally sums up the vocational inheritance of the house of Levi, at least as it regards the wilderness tabernacle and everything it has to do with that wilderness tabernacle. And if this word does, in fact, sum up the nature and the characteristic of the house of Levi, let me share this with you. They understood at that particular time in creation, they understood that the Hebrew language was prophetic. And so when they would name, if you'll allow, their children a specific name, it carried a prophecy in it that they had understood from the generations before them, and they were thinking forward, they were thinking generationally, and so they understood the name that I'm about to apply to my child and my children's children are going to help to flesh out the prophecy that's been given to us as a family. And so there's a vital connection here with this word naso in the Hebrew language and the vocation of the sons of Levi. And so I think it's to our best interest if we want to find out about the priestly system. And most people will take the New Testament where it says that we have been called to be kings and priests and align that particular phrase with the house of Levi. And we're going to share some things that's going to make some people scratch their head, maybe make people mad with me. And I'll be honest with you, I've been around long enough that doesn't bother me too much. What I want to do is make sure that I share what Abba gives me. That is what bothers me. If I don't share the truth of what He's given me, then I get concerned. And so what I'm about to share with you probably is going to affect your particular paradigm, not only about the house of Levi, the priestly system as it relates to the coming third temple that's on the horizon, but also your particular role as a king and priest vis-a-vis how it would relate to the house of Levi, or if it does at all. Now, I want to look at that word naso. It's actually written with the nun, sheen, aleph, but it's closely related if you understand cognate words and letters that sound alike, like the sheen and the samic. Well, it's closely related to nun, samic, hey, nasa, naso, nasa. Only the vowel points changing here gives you a little bit more of an understanding of how that word should be pronounced and then how it be used. But you also have to understand that context will also determine the definition of a word, or the definition of a word will help to determine the context within how it's used in that particular text. And so nasa has a wide meaning. And so you can say nasa and naso as it relates to the house of Levi. It means to test, to try or to prove them. To tear down, sometimes you need your sacred cows torn down. To pull out, sometimes you need old weed seed removed. Say amen. And in fact, this word Naso is only seen one time, and it's seen in the book of Ezra. Ezra was the scribe. Ezra knew the Torah probably, I want to say better, but at least as well as anyone else in the Tanakh, simply because he was tasked with taking the Hebrew language and the Hebrew letters and all of the little nuances of the Hebrew letters and conveying them to the people in a written form. When it's seen there in Ezra 6, it's indicating to take a beam of wood from the house of a person who has committed an offense and take that particular beam of wood, like you'd see in this particular edifice, this structure here. You take this beam of wood out, and if it was my personal house and I had committed an offense against the nation, then that particular beam would be used as part of my execution. It would be used to crucify or impale me on it. Wow, did you hear what I just said? Do you think of that you might could recall someone who was impaled on a beam in order to sacrifice himself for a house that had been offensive to Abba? It reminds us of our Messiah Yeshua. And so as we begin to look at this word Naso, you literally are beginning to pull back a curtain that you can look on the other side of this particular dimension you've been accustomed to, and it's going to reveal a deeper dimension of who Levi was and the service of Levi. Now, we have to look really closely because traditionally this word Naso is emphasized in regard to taking the sum or the numbering. In other words, a census, if you will, of the sons of Levi. And it's important because Levi's obligations and the hierarchy, the pecking order of the sons of Levi, are actually the central focus of this particular Torah portion. So why would Yahweh speak to Moshe and say, Naso, these sons of Levi? Elevate, pull down, tear down, remove. Come on, you need to look at all of these particular nuances in the definitions as it relates to the central subject of what we're talking about, because it will help you to understand exactly what's happening rather than what your traditions have told you. Traditions are good if traditions are used as a teaching tool that you can put up against the word of Abba and measure it. But if you can't measure it against the word of Yahweh, then you need to set your tradition aside. And a lot of the things that we've had grandfathered down to us in the day that we're living in now, these traditions have helped us to form the paradigms of what we believe is about to happen. How many of you believe that we're living in the end times? Well, all of end time prophecy, at least as far as I've been able to study over the last 40 years, seem to be somehow intricately connected with the role of the house of Levi and the sons of Levi, that priestly system, and the system that they had in charge over, the sacrificial system, and a coming third temple. All of that is prophetically ensconced, literally wound up, if you will, inside the role of Levi. I need to know exactly what his role was, especially if maybe I've misunderstood some things, because misunderstanding is going to affect my direction. Did you hear me? Now, if you take that word Nasa or Naso, and remember it's the Nun, Shin, Aleph, and you just take those same letters and you rearrange them to Aleph, Nun, Shin, you have the word Enosh. And so if I was to tell you that to Naso Levi and the sons of Levi, those same three letters, the inherent meaning of those letters never change. And so I could also say Enosh Levi. Did you hear that? Well, the word Enosh is the Hebrew word that's used to identify man in a number of instances throughout the scriptures, but it specifically indicates a frail man, a weakly man, prone to sickness and disease in his body and in need of healing, a man who has death working in him. And so I can't separate elevating, numbering, removing, tearing down lifting up, counting the heads of Levi from the fact that he is also being identified here, at least as in some degree, to an individual or an entity that is weak and frail and has death working in it. Can you see that? And so I have to ask yourself, is there something in this portion that has some hidden information regarding the lifting up of an Enosh or a frail man? And is it possible we can find some information hidden here that will identify who this quote-unquote man was and who this man is at present? And I believe that there's a direct connection to the house of Levi and the identification of who this Enosh man was. And if you will remember, as we've discussed over a number of occasions over the years, we believe that the wilderness tabernacle was actually designed in the form of or patterned after this fallen man, this frail Enosh man that was in need of restoration and healing. I've said this for years, that I believe that the tabernacle man was actually formed in the pattern of the Adam after the fall. The Adam after the fall was an Enosh man, not Enoch. Don't get the two words confused. Enosh. The Adam after the fall, turn to your neighbor and tell him, you are patterned after that first Adam. You are an Enosh man outside a blood covenant relationship with our Messiah Yeshua. You are a man that's frail, weak, sickly, and death is working in you. Can you see that? And so, understanding this should help us to understand the role of Levi, because Levi was set in the office as the caretaker of the wilderness tabernacle. And if the wilderness tabernacle was in fact designed in the form of a man, a wilderness tent, you can go back and see the correlation between the word skin for skin, and you can understand that the wilderness tabernacle literally was a pattern of a skin tent like I walk around in right now. This is a skin tent. Adam and Eve were the first two physical, carnal, fleshly individuals in the earth to walk around in a skin tent called a tabernacle. And so Levi was given charge of this pattern in the wilderness, and Levi was called to be the custodian. How many of you know what a custodian is? A janitor, to simplify the term. A custodian is one who has the responsibility for the personal care of something that he's been given charge of. Levi was the custodian responsible for the tent man, and if he was responsible, then I have to ask you, how long did that responsibility that Levi was charged with last? And oh my goodness, here's where feathers get really ruffled, because a lot of people argue that Levi's role was eternal. And I will agree to a certain extent. I will agree that as long as that fallen tabernacle man is the pattern that we must look at, then Levi is still his caretaker. On the other hand, if you can agree with me that the wilderness tabernacle was also, if he was a pattern of the fallen Adam, and Yeshua became as the last Adam to repair, to lift up, to tear something out, to tear something down, and to restore the original pattern of the tabernacle man. And if Yeshua destroyed the powers of sin, death, hell, and the grave, then the pattern we have now is an example of a resurrected tabernacle man. And if that's the case, it requires a new custodian. Did you hear what I just said? Why does it require someone with a different dimensional relationship with Yahweh? Because you cannot have a resurrected, perfected man with a corrupt custodian. Did you hear that? And so it requires a new officiant, a new custodian, a new priesthood, a new order. I believe this order comes along in the guise of, or after the semblance of, the order of Melchizedek. And I know, again, people get upset by that. And this is really a delicate subject, and we're going to move as carefully as we can. But I'm going to attempt to show you the Levitical duty, the Levitical role that he was supposed to play, and the heritage that was his as it related to his charge as the custodian of the temporary Enosh man. Does this make sense to you? I'll back up and relook at it if you can't get this. I would suggest you get the notes, go back and listen to this, because I'm telling you, you're going to hear some things. I wrote this down. I took this dictation as best that I could, and I'm telling you, I heard some things from Abba that I've never heard before, but I'm convinced that this is the truth, and truth can stand scrutiny. And so I want to begin in Numbers chapter 1, verse 53, and this is the role of Levi, again. You need to back off. Sometimes we get tunnel vision and we can't see the forest for the trees. You're right on top of the subject. Sometimes you need to get back away so that you can get more of a bird's eye view of your subject, so that you can see things that sometimes you get comfortable being around and you just can't or not willing to see. Are you listening? And so this verse in Numbers chapter 1 tells us the Levites, say that with me, Levites, shall pitch round about the tabernacle of testimony. Now you need to highlight this. If you're uncomfortable in marking in your Bible, then you need to make yourself some notes. You need to highlight this particular phrase. Shall pitch round about the tabernacle of testimony. Why? Why were they charged with pitching around, camping around the tabernacle? The next phrase tells you, so that there will be no wrath upon the congregation of the children of Israel. And as a result, Levites are going to be called to keep the charge of the tabernacle of the testimony. Stop right there. And let me just break it down as simple as I can. Levi is told to camp around the tabernacle for the express purpose of preventing the wrath of Yahweh. Whatever that reason is, we're going to look at it, but they're to camp around the tabernacle to keep the wrath of Yahweh from falling on the rest of the nation. Now I need to know what was wrong, what was happening that could cause wrath to fall on the rest of the nation. Okay? So we're going to look at that. Now, as we've talked before, and I believe Andrew Hoy does a great job. Go back and look at Project 314. I believe he does a great job in helping to expound some things that we don't have time to even begin to look at today. But we believe that the tabernacle was fashioned, and I'm talking about the wilderness tabernacle, was fashioned in a cyclical, circular pattern. Why do I believe that? Because Moshe was given a pattern, and now it says the pattern is what you see in the heavens. Okay? The pattern in the heavenlies is cyclical. And I will share this with you. Everything that occurs in nature is cyclical. If you go out in nature and you find something that has squared corners, it's man-made. Okay? And so, based on the tribal alignment that we were just looking at, Levites shall camp around the tabernacle tent. They would have, if the tabernacle is in fact circular, as I believe it is, then they would have also formed a circle around a circular tent, a wheel around a wheel. Where have I heard that before? It seems as if Ezekiel discusses it, especially as it regards the future prophetic relationship with this coming temple that I believe is not this third temple construction project already being started. Are you hearing me? Ezekiel's wheel within a wheel. And so if Levite is camped in a circular pattern around a circular vestige called a tent, listen to me, it would have actually effectively closed off access to this wilderness tent to everybody else. Levi was to camp around this tent to keep anybody else from any of the other 12 or 11 tribes from having access to the tabernacle. Why? Yahweh says, if they have access to this tabernacle, my wrath is going to fall on them. Can you imagine the weight and the responsibility on the house of Levi, knowing that the people want access to the Creator, they want access to His presence. But if they have access to His presence because of their current condition, they're going to die. And so Levi has been given a solemn charge. Think about that. Now, it's also an established fact that the other 11 tribes would have encircled Levi. So you would have smaller and smaller circles, or larger and larger circles as you get out. You would have the circular tent. You would have had Levi, and then you would have had the other 11 tribes at the 4 compass points, north, south, east, and the west, in a circular alignment, also around Levi and the tabernacle. As we looked at this and preparing for this teaching, I'm telling you, there's some things that I would have to literally get up out of my seat, go away from there, and I couldn't talk to anybody else in the house at the moment because they're thinking he's a lunatic. So I would talk to the only lunatic that I knew, and that was me. I'd talk to myself. Are you hearing what? Are you looking at this? And so the only other person that I knew that was accustomed to being called crazy was Shepherd John. So I say, have you seen this? And then I would go back and I would put this stuff down. This word here for pitch, to pitch their tent, is not like taking a horseshoe and pitching horseshoes. It actually is the word chana, Strong's number 2583, and it's translated in a variety of ways. Most people believe it means to take and literally, as we would commonly say, pitch a tent, to incline, to encamp, to bend down, to decline. But the primary meaning of this word chana actually conveys the idea of the sun's rays as it declines or decreases or deteriorates as the evening progresses. Remember this, because you've never connected this with the definition of the camping order of the children of Israel, in particular Levi. Now, this word kana is also closely related. You need to learn to look at these cognate or related words. Let me just share this with you. I'll try and make it as simple as I can. If you look at me, you can see my particular facial appearance. If you look at my children, you can see my children have their own particular facial structure and facial appearance, but my children will look like me as well. And grandchildren will resemble me to a certain extent. Does that make sense to you? And so when you see these cognate, and I know some of y'all are saying, poor children, poor grandchildren. But I'm just using this as an illustration because you need to learn to look at these related words like you would children and grandchildren, because if you look at my children and my grandchildren, they will tell you a lot more about me than you could ever know just knowing who I am. And so you need to learn to look at these cognate related words. And this word kanan means to be gracious, favored, pitied, shown consideration, to bend or to stoop down in kindness to someone who's an inferior, and to show compassion to them. Remember, we're talking about Levi's role in camping around the tabernacle, okay? It's more than just, okay, we're going to go pitch our tent here. This is what we were instructed to do. Go get the tents, boys, and let's just set these tents up. Pitch roundabout. The phrase roundabout comes from one Hebrew word, saviv, and it means a circuit, a circle. Wait a second. Pitch in a circle. Did you hear that? It comes from the root savav, which indicates to turn about, to turn around, to turn aside. And this is mind-staggering here, but it also can hint that as I'm being obedient to pitch my tent in a circular fashion, that the reason I'm here is because I'm an instrument of change. I'm going to help to reverse and to return whatever it is I'm camping around or about to a different era or a different time frame. Okay? And then there's that word wrath. You camp this way. If you don't camp this way, then my wrath will fall on the nation of Israel. That word wrath there comes from the word ketsef, which means wrath, anger, but it also indicates to break or splinter a twig off of a branch. And so if they don't camp around this tabernacle in a specific order, it means that this group behind them is going to be broken off. What happens if you are broken off the living branch? I am the vine, you the branches. If you abide in me and my word abide in you, listen to me, if you're not abiding in him, you're broken off, you're a dead branch. Once you're broken off the life source, there is no life working in you. You got to keep this in your mind because this is important. Now look at the word charge. They were given this charge. It's the Hebrew word mishmeret, and it's defined as to guard, to watch, and preserve. But context drives this particular vehicle. In the context here, the root of mishmeret is the word mishmar, and it hints at a place of confinement, a guard post. Hold up a second. A guard post is set up around a place of confinement. They're being charged with setting up a circular guard post around the tabernacle, and it's telling you that the tabernacle is a place of confinement. Whatever is in this tabernacle has to be confined, and you need to guard it, because if you don't keep whatever's in this tabernacle confined, those that are outside your circle coming in contact with whatever I have confined in this tabernacle are going to experience my wrath. That's heavy, yeah. All right? And so this is actually hinting that the Levites had the custody of this tabernacle man, listen to me, and that this tabernacle man is also in a season of confinement. Remember, we said he's in the flesh. He is a fleshly Enosh man, right? And so he's confined. Listen, you need to grasp the picture here. This is the pattern from Adam's fall forward. We are literally imprisoned in this flesh. And we are confined in this flesh until such time as someone can come in contact with us who can reverse, who can change, and who can release us. You see that? And so this is Levi's role. Levi is actually standing in the role of a pseudo-Messiah. They're here to make sure to guard this man who's confined into this fleshly tent dwelling until such time as the man can be released from his carnal fleshly chains. Does that make sense? And so, again, look at my notes. You correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like the Levites are camped, literally encircling or embracing, if you will, a tabernacle that represents a corrupted, frail Enosh man who has death working in him, and this tent man is in need of redemption. If it's a pattern of the fallen Adam, Adam needs redemption. Turn to your neighbor and tell him we needed redemption. And without doubt, this tabernacle man is a temporal vessel. That wilderness tent was a temporal vessel.